Everyone would rise for the invocation. Pastor Les Smith from Victory Baptist Church. Les, it's always good to have you here. Will lead us in the invocation. Everyone would remain standing at the invocation for the Pledge of Allegiance.
Appreciate you inviting me.
Glad to have you, sir.
May we pray. But seek ye first the kingdom of God and his righteousness, and all these things shall be added unto you. I wonder if we live like that, how it would improve our city. Thank you for this great city. And the great commandment, thou shalt love the Lord thy God with all thy heart, soul, strength, and mind, and thy neighbor as thyself, the golden rule. Oh, Lord God, we're not a bunch of races. We're the human race. We're all in this together. Yes. And everybody's important to you. For we have not an high priest which cannot be touched with the feelings of our infirmities, but was in all points tempted like as we, yet without sin. Let us therefore come boldly to the throne of grace to obtain mercy and find grace to help in such a time as need. Lord, tonight I pray for the city council, both the men and the ladies who have a tough job. I pray that they will give equal fairness and opportunity to every concern. And I pray, oh God, that the good job that they're doing with the group homes and the mentally challenged people in this city and the nursing homes and the seniors that are going through suffering and so on, and those that are afflicted, those that have a difficult time finding jobs, and the poor, Lord, that we'd look out for their needs. And then the schools, and Lord, and that we might protect our children and give them what the past generation gave us, and passing the baton that we ought to pray the Lord's Prayer to do his will. And Lord God, I pray tonight for the Boy Scouts. I see them here, and maybe Girl Scouts and whoever else. And I don't know what'll take place, but I know it's important to those that are here. I pray for our hospitals and those that are sick, Lord. May we visit and care for those. I pray, Heavenly Father, for the churches. I pray, Lord, for the police department and the fire department and the ambulance squads and the hospitals, and Lord, for this great city in which I've had the privilege of being a pastor for the past 37 years. And Lord, I pray that your anointing would be upon the leadership, because everything rises and falls on leadership of this great group of counselors tonight. I pray these things to the Father in Jesus' precious name. Amen.
Amen. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Les, thank you again for coming down. Good to see you. You have the roll call.
Yes, Your Honor.
To have a motion for the certification of the closed session.
So moved.
Second.
I have a motion and a second. Is there any discussion? I'll call for the question, please.
By a vote of 11 to 0, you have approved, certified the closed session to be in accordance with the motion to recess.
You have a motion for approval of the minutes of July 7th, 2015.
Second.
I have a motion and a second. Any discussion? We'll call for the question, please.
By a vote of 10 to 0 with Mr. Moss abstaining, you have approved the minutes as submitted.
Is Carolyn,
I just want to explain my abstention.
Please.
Please, thank you, Mr. Mayor. I was being a scoutmaster in scout camp last week, and that's why I was absent.
is Carolyn Kaywood here, please? If you could come forward, please. It's my pleasure to read this proclamation, and Carolyn, thank you for coming down, because you've done so much to help with the Americans with Disabilities Act.
Thank you.
I'd like to read this proclamation as you come forward. Whereas on July 26, 1990, President George H.W. Bush signed into law the Americans with Disabilities Act to ensure the civil rights of people with disabilities. And whereas the legislation established a clear and comprehensive national mandate for the elimination of discrimination against individuals with disabilities. Whereas the ADA has expanded opportunities for Americans with disabilities by reducing barriers and changing perceptions and increasing full participation in community life. And whereas the full promise of the ADA will only be reached if we remain committed to continue our efforts to fully implement the ADA. Whereas on July 26, 2015, we will celebrate the 25th anniversary of the Americans with Disabilities Act, celebrate and recognize the progress that has been made by reaffirming the principles of equality and inclusion and recommitting our efforts to reach full ADA compliance. Now, therefore, I, William D. Sussman, Jr., Mayor of the City of Virginia Beach, Virginia, do hereby proclaim July 26, 2015, 25th anniversary of Americans with Disabilities Act in Virginia Beach, and I call upon all citizens to reaffirm to continue work toward full ADA compliance. May I present this to you? Thank you. We appreciate you coming down tonight. Patty Phillips. If I could ask Patty to come forward. You know, she's only responsible for about $1.8 billion annually, right? And this is not the first time I've read this, as this council knows, but I can't think of anything more important than to make sure that our money is well handled and protected with the fine job that you and your staff do. We're very blessed. But this is the Certificate of Achievement for Excellence in Financial Reporting presented to the City of Virginia Beach, Virginia for its comprehensive annual financial report for the fiscal year ended June 30th, 2014. And Patty, on behalf of the City Council and the citizens, we thank you and the wonderful people who work with you.
Thank you. I'd like to
Please do.
if those in the Finance Department, Aaron McCoy, Don Barnett, and Miriam Woodson are here. They helped make this possible.
sure did.
And they've got to go back upstairs now and work on next year's.
Well, thank you again. Okay. I'm going to open a public hearing on the lease of city-owned property at 1011 Atlantic Avenue, Open Air Cafe.
No speakers, Your Honor.
Thank you. Mr. Vice Mayor, if you'd move forward with the consent agenda, please.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Mr. Mayor, I'd like to move for approval under the consent agenda. First on ordinances, item J1, which is ordinance to grant a franchise agreement with Molly R. Liquid Assets 2 LLC, an open air cafe at 1101 Atlantic Avenue in the Beach District. J2, ordinance to authorize David L. and K. D. Kaufman temporary encroachments into portions of city property to reconstruct and maintain an existing brick patio wall, block wall, and basketball goal at 82nd Street and Oceanfront in the Lynn Haven District. J3, ordinance to accept and appropriate $906,662 from the Federal Highway Administration, traffic safety improvements, and transfer $226,666, a local grant match Shore Drive Bike Project. J4, ordinance to accept a cooperative agreement between City Council and the School Board for legal services for fiscal year 2016. The clerk would please note that Mr. Moss is voting no on that item. Planning.
Open a public hearing for planning.
Under planning for consent, item K1, which is Oceana South Commerce Center for a variance to the subdivision regulations to create a new lot at 2509 Squadron Court in the Rose Hall District. K2, application of David S. and Teresa A. Italiano for a conditional use permit, bulk storage yard at 1417 London Bridge Road in the Rose Hall District. K3 is the application of William Phelps Land Tech Resources, Inc. and Kyle Ellis Enterprise Holdings for a conditional use permit for a motor vehicle rentals at 1845 Laskin Road in the Beach District. K4, Happy Boxes Lynn Haven LLC and JLB Property Associates LLC. A, resolution to authorize a limited waiver of the height restriction, and B, conditional use permit storage at the east side of South Lynn Haven Road and Shore Drive in the Rose Hall District. So moved, Mr. Mayor.
Have a motion to have a second.
Second.
Any discussion? I'll call for the question, please.
By a vote of 11-0, you have approved the items read by the Vice Mayor for the consent agenda, noting Mr. Moss's nay vote on BJ4.
I now go to item number 5, Piney Grove Baptist Church, Millard F. Reed, Charles Frederick Reed, Jacqueline S. Pratt for a conditional use permit for regarding an expansion of a church at 2804 Holland Road and 2821 Bald Eagle. Ladies and gentlemen that are here to speak on this, the applicant will have 10 minutes to speak, and then every other speaker will be have 3 minutes. I will be very firm as far as the time frame for speaking. That's to be fair. And so I just would ask everyone's indulgence to please stay within the time frame. In addition, we would ask that you hold off on applause, because that will just delay things as we move forward and doesn't serve much of a purpose. But we welcome each and every one. We look forward to all the compliments, all the comments. And more than importantly, before we get started, I also want to recognize we have another Boy Scout troop here, Troop 481 from St. Aidan's Church, Kings Grant area. And Mike McCoskin is the leader. If they could stand and we could recognize them, please. Okay, Madam Clerk, if you'd be kind enough to go ahead and call the speakers. And
Before I do that, 2 of the opposition speakers are representing groups and would like to attend.
if they are representing the Civic League or something along those lines, we'll work through it.
Pastor D.L. Williams, and if you will listen, I will call 2 names. The first name is to come to the podium. The second name will be come forward so we can save time. The second will be Mark Ricketts.
Pastor Williams?
Not quite.
Mr. Mayor, members of City Council, my name's Mark Ricketts. Pastor would like for me to go first. I'm just going to do a quick introduction.
We
and
welcome
turn it
you,
over to
Mark.
Pastor. Yes, sir. But anyway, Mark Ricketts, Site Improvement Associates. We're the engineering firm who has been working with Pastor Williams on the Piney Grove Baptist Church. My staff and I are here to answer any questions that you may have. We just wanted to let you know anything technical. We'll be more than happy to address that. As far as the church itself, I'd like to turn it over to Pastor Williams and let him make.
Very good. Thank you.
Thank you.
Pastor Williams, we welcome you.
Thank you, sir. I want to recognize the entire city council. Thank you for having us here tonight. First of all, I want to thank Ms. Barbara Henley for doing a great job in representing the community, as well as Piney Grove Baptist Church. She did an awesome job of coming out to several meetings with ourselves and the community, as well as a meeting individually with the church, as well as the community. So I just want to thank her for the time that she invested to get us here thus far, to help us compromise and do what we've already done. I don't want to rehearse the historic value and the contemporary significance of Piney Grove Baptist Church. I think that this entire council is already aware of how Piney Grove has been such a positive presence in the city of Virginia Beach for nearly 150 years now. I think it goes without saying that Piney Grove Baptist Church has been a thriving church, that we've done a host of ministries, a host of life-changing things here in the city. So I don't want to rehearse that tonight. I want to go ahead and deal with a few talking points that I think are very relevant to the proposal that is before you tonight. As you can see, we are proposing to expand our current 65 parking lot to 250 parking spaces, and to construct a new worship facility that will have a capacity seating of 835 people. One of the talking points that I want to highlight very quickly is the issue of aesthetics. Whenever we first initially proposed to the community to do this project that is before you today, one of the concerns that the community voiced was aesthetics. They felt that us tearing down the home and adding a parking lot would take away from the beauty of the community. What our team decided to do was to put a plan together that would not take away from the beauty of the community, but that it would add to it. I'm sure that you've already reviewed everything that we have submitted, and you can see that we've gone great lengths to add botanical beauty and some live plants that will add both color and character to the community. I believe that, though there are some people that are in opposition of this project, I believe that our team has done such a wonderful job of being very intentional to add color and character and botanical beauty to this project, that in the future, the residents will drive by and see this as a staple, something to behold in their community. Also, you will note that we did add also a wood fence to our project, because one of the other concerns that the community voiced was they did not want to drive by our parking lot and actually see a parking lot. So what we did was we also put all these colorful flowers, but added a wood fence so that when residents drive by this particular area of the community, they will in no way, shape, or form see a parking lot, but they will only see the aesthetic beauty that we've added to this area. So as a result of considering the concerns, these two major concerns of the community, which was changing the aesthetics and driving by and seeing a parking lot, we were very intentional to address these concerns so that we may win the support of, if not all, most of the community residents. I also want to deal with one of the major talking points, which is parking. One of the main issues that initially surfaced with this entire project was the invasion of cars from our worship service in the community area. It is no doubt that with only 65 parking spaces that we have, that we do have cars parking in the community to come to worship. If you don't know, we have two services, and one of our more populated services is our second service, our 11 a.m. service. When I first arrived to Piney Grove Baptist Church, it was my vision to take all of the cars out of the community. One of the reasons I wanted to do that, because I felt that as a visionary leader, that it just wasn't attractive to young families who have babies and small kids to have to park 2 blocks around the corner and to walk into worship service. Right now, we have a host of women that wear flats to drive to church, and they wear their flats to walk to church, and you see them changing shoes when they get into church because they don't want to walk in 3-inch heels to get into the sanctuary. So it was my vision to come up with a parking plan where we can have all of our worship attendees having the convenience to park on site. And so that's where this project initially comes into play. If you read the transcript from the Planning Commission meeting that we had on last month, and also watch maybe the recording of that meeting, you can see that even a lot of the community members voiced great concern with having a host of cars parking in the community. So we pretty much were on the same page with not wanting cars in the community. But though we were on the same page with that, with the first proposal that we sent of the 187 parking spaces, the community voiced that we did not have enough parking. Though it exceeded the code of parking to seat capacity, they voiced a great anxiety that we still did not have enough parking and that there still will be cars in the community. Which is why you notice that the Planning Commission voted 10-1 in favor of us expanding this parking project from 187 to now 250, in which we are convinced that not only is that enough parking to handle the current worship attendees that we have, but it's also more than enough parking to give us room for growth, to handle any potential future growth that we may have. Also, let it be noted by this council that according to the 5-to-1 code of parking to seating in the sanctuary, that we are only required by this code to have 167 parking spaces. Our initial proposal exceeded that requirement by approximately 20 spaces. The proposal that you have right now exceeds this code by almost 100 spaces, which we believe that, again, we have not only more than enough to meet our current demands and our future growth potential, but we have more than enough to meet the city's code to build the size of the building that we want to build. According to the code, I want you to note that we have enough parking space to build a 1,250-seat capacity sanctuary, but we are only proposing to build 835, which is almost 400 seats short than what this city will require us to build. So I would like this city council to, if you will, recognize that already as a compromise with the community, that we are not suggesting to build according to what the Virginia Code give us the potential to build, but we are considering not building a sizable building that just may take away from the beauty of the community. We believe that 835 seats will fit in just well with the community and the beauty that's already there. As previously stated, Virginia Code mandates a 5-to-1 seating to parking ratio. However, the community has their own unofficial code that they want to go by, which is 2.6-to-1. They came by our property and they did their own counting. We gave them numbers. We were kind enough to give them those numbers of how many worshipers we had, and they calculated that we have about 2.6-to-1 that was attending worship service, that the 5-to-1 was very generous. Those is the Virginia Code. They feel like it was generous. So what we did was we felt that to fill 835 seats, according to the unofficial community code 2.6-to-1, that we need approximately 321 parking spaces. And that's where our parking across the street comes into play. As you know, we are already utilizing the parking space across the street, and it gives us a parking potential of 75 cars. If we add this 75 to the proposed 250, that now gives us the parking potential of 325 cars, which slightly even overdoes what the community says we need to fill the sanctuary of 835.
Pastor, we thank you very much.
Thank you.
Yes, sir.
It's 10 minutes already?
Yes, sir.
Well, you know preachers can be long.
I thought you were a lawyer up there, Steve. I'm fine.
Thank you so much, sir.
Thank you, sir.
He didn't even look at his notes.
Next speaker, please.
Linda Russell, Joseph Burgess. Sir, wait just a minute. Mrs. Russell goes ahead of you.
Okay. We welcome you tonight.
Mayor and all of you guys, bear with me because the last time I was here, I was told by someone in the audience that I made good sense, but I need to hire somebody to speak for me, okay? So bear with me, and hopefully, if Ruth's done her job right, you all have what I intended to say anyway, okay? I think it's really a shame that stuck 145, well, he said 50, but we'll go with 145 years for us to notice where the Piney Grove Church is, okay? And so thank goodness for that. Some question their property values when this happens at the Planning Commission, which I attended. I noticed, if you guys went out to look at it, there's someone right where they're going to put the new sanctuary, building a swimming pool in ground. So wouldn't you think that if they thought that the property values would go down, would you invest in putting a swimming pool in? No, you wouldn't, would you? You'd probably be getting out of there. But anyway, in the crossing, they talked about the crossing guards in the Planning Commission. I doubt they're going to do that this time because I think the planning thing's pretty much where they park is going to be okay. But they mentioned the trouble with their crossing guard. They never mentioned anything about just a short distance down the road, it's 2 schools, where crossing guards hop out in front of you all the time. So, you know, so I think what we need to do, what we do best, is welcome all of us. Most of us are outsiders, just like most of these people, and we build. But when we build, we also like to preserve, so they are preserving the church they have now in their building. That's what we do best in Virginia Beach, right? Okay, so, like I said, I do park in the neighborhood, but when I found out these people were inspecting my car and everything, I decided to park on the other street on Damascus. Well, those people, on purpose on Sunday morning, put their vehicles in their garages so that these fine folks can park over on that side of the street, okay? They have no problem with parking over there. So anyway, I would like to they thanked Barbara, they thanked everybody. I would like to thank Pastor Williams. Since he was 15 years old, he wanted to be a preacher, so now he's a preacher. Not only that, he has a blended family, of all things. Now he has a brand new baby. So he's traveled to the south of, he's traveled, South America, Brazil, Haiti. I imagine that this right here has been his greatest challenge in his life so far. So I would like for you to...
Thank you very much.
I would like for you to...
Next speaker, please.
Joseph Burgess and Campus Peterson.
We welcome you, sir.
Mr. Mayor, members of the council, my name is Joseph Benjamin Burgess III. I'm one of 19 deacons at Piney Grove Baptist Church. I'm a 26-year U.S. Navy veteran, and I've been at Piney Grove Baptist Church for 17 years. I thank you for giving me the opportunity to speak to you this evening, and my focus is on the benefit of Piney Grove Baptist Church in the community. One of the things that we do in the community is that we do feed the homeless. I'm sure all of you are familiar with the Judeo-Christian Outreach Center located close to the oceanfront. We have a linkage with them where we go out there and feed the homeless. We also have a food pantry every Tuesday on church grounds where we provide nourishment for families that are in need. We also have a major linkage with Virginia Beach schools. Holland Elementary is the school that we have been currently working with for the past year. We also have a in-school suspension mentoring program that we have on site. Also, there are many members of our church that are employees of Virginia Beach Public Schools. About 14 years ago, once I retired from the Navy, I also was working for Virginia Beach Public Schools as a long-term substitute at Bayside High School. One of the other outreach ministries that we have, I'm also involved in that. I've been doing this for about 3 or 4 years now, out at Indian Creek Correctional Center in Chesapeake, where we do spiritual mentoring to offenders so that when they are released, that is a tough time, we give them something to stand on through the Spirit of God. In closing, if you'd like to find any other information about our church, you can go to our website, but most of all, we'd like you to stop by and worship with us. Thank you again for letting me speak to you this evening.
Thank you, sir. Next speaker, please.
Campus Peterson and Joseph McCree.
We welcome you today, sir.
Good evening. My name is Capus Peterson, and I too am a retired veteran from the United States Navy. I'm the chairman of the Deacon Ministry at Piney Grove Baptist Church, and I have been at Piney Grove now for over 20 years. I won't waste your time telling you about all the wonderful things that Piney Grove have done over the last 145 years, because I think our work speaks for itself. But what I am here, and what we all are here to do, is to support our great church in this effort to rebuild. We are here now in great numbers. Piney Grove, wave your hand. We are here in great numbers to support our church, but most of all, we're here tonight to rejoice in our Lord, because He's been good to us. We realize that you all have a hard job to ensure that the city is ran smoothly and fairly to everyone. We are not asking for any favors. We are not asking for any deals. We are asking to obey the law and to follow the law. Our members, the community major complaint is driving through the neighborhood, which we do, which is legal. They complain about us parking on the street, which is legal. We have a right to do that. We're doing everything in our power to be able to move out the community. But until then, we have a right to park on the streets. And we are trying our best to work with them in order to be able to accomplish that. So with all of that said, we just ask that you just obey, do what you are called to do, and that approve the ordinance that does not violate the rights or the law of Virginia Beach. You know, we realize tonight that that the vote is in your hands. But understand this one thing is that the vision and the will of Piney Grove Baptist Church is in nobody's hands but the Lord. And that's who have brought us 145 years to this day, and that's what's going to carry us the rest of the way. I thank you, and I expect that you all will do the right thing, and I expect the neighborhood to get on board with our plan, because we will do nothing but work with them to beautify the neighborhood. Thank you, and may God bless you.
Thank you, sir. Next speaker, please.
And Lloyd Cloud.
We welcome you, sir.
Good evening, Mayor Sessom, rest of the council members. I'm Joseph McCree Jr. I'm going to give you a slight history. First of all, you're probably going to see some of our church members squirm in their seat because I confer with no one to come to you tonight, nor do they know what I'm going to talk about tonight. That being said, as you all know, the first church was built for Piney Grove in 1870. I joined shortly thereafter. Okay. I was moved here along with my family in 1981 by way of the Navy. I retired out of the Navy with 24 years in 1987, July 87. A month later, I joined Piney Grove. The wife joined a week before I did. That was in the old edifice before the present one. Because of the size, the way we grew then, we moved into the present one a couple of years later. Now, the present edifice has come short. We have a problem meeting our needs for our congregation, and we have a problem with classroom, shortage of classroom. We can't have enough classes to meet our needs. We can't have meetings sometimes because of lack of space, and so on and so forth. And as the pastor and others stated on the outside, the parking is horrendous. I want to urge the council here that if you approve this, we have strong leadership in the church. We keep things in order inside the church as well as outside of the church on our property. And if you approve our expansion, this leadership, this church will make sure that we will not tear down the neighborhood as some expect us to. We will maintain our property like we have done in the past, and we will alleviate the parking area that some of them complain about parking in their neighborhood, and some of our people crossing in their street during worship service. So I urge the council, please, please, please pass this extension of the church edifice as well as the parking lot.
Thank you, sir. Next speaker, please.
Lloyd Cloud and Roy Smith.
We welcome you, sir.
Thank you. Greetings, Mayor Systems and City Council. Thank you for the opportunity to address you. My wife and I and our family have been 13-year residents in the neighborhood of Holland Pines behind the Piney Grove Church, and we've enjoyed a very good relationship with the church. We're not members there, we're members of Coastal Community. The relationship with the church, we feel, has gotten even better with Pastor Williams coming. He's leading the church to connect, throughout the city with other churches, with other communities and people in need in various ways. And that's their theme this year, is connecting. And so it's bearing fruit, and we're just looking for greater things. We passed their church on the way to, and are just happy to see so many people responding to the gospel and to the ministry of Piney Grove Church. And so we support their plans and feel like that they will they will live up to everything that they pledged to do within the building plans and that they're required to do by the laws of the city of Virginia Beach. I think that they are representative of why Virginia Beach doesn't have the problems that some major cities in the U.S. have had, particularly in the last year or two, and I think they are just a positive force in the community. In terms of the parking, I would make a relationship to coastal community. Thank you for granting our request, to build a new worship center, 750-seat worship center that we've been in 2 Sundays. But to show you the impact of parking, we have 2 services at Coastal, just like they have 2 services. We're at the intersection of South Independence and Round Hill. But by the second Sunday, we were having the dedication for the new building, the new worship center, and the leadership, the pastor announced that, okay, we need to raise some funds to put in more parking because already in the first week we're out of parking. And so we are in support of what the church is doing, and we're in support of what the church is requesting. So thank you for considering favorably this.
Thank you.
request.
Next speaker, please.
Roy Smith and Morton Cochran. Roy Smith?
I'm Roy Smith.
Oh, you're Roy Smith. Lloyd Cloud is not here?
We welcome you today, sir.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Mayor and members of City Council, I greet you in the name of our Lord and Savior, Jesus Christ. I am a member of Piney Grove Baptist Church, and I work as a realtor. And as a realtor, we know that we must adhere to a code of ethics. So being a member of that church helps me with such things as honesty and integrity. I am requesting your approval of our church expansion plan for the following reasons. This is a house of prayer. And we know as we look at our nation today, we need prayer. And further, it meets all of the requirements set forth by our planning and our zoning departments. And churches in our neighborhoods are positive. They help reduce crime. Churches teach its members to love one another. This is important. Unlike bars and distilleries, churches tend to reduce crime and add to the overall quality of life of our community. I am convinced that should this application have been for a bar or a distillery, we would not have had the resistance that we do have now. Further, in my 29 years as a realtor, I have never seen wherein the presence of a church in a community would adversely affect the property value. Contrarily, the presence of the church would tend to increase the property values within the community. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir. Next speaker, please.
Martin Cochran. Your Honor, this speaker and the next one, Al Whitehurst Jr., both say they represent Holland Pines, and they both ask for 10 minutes.
Well, one person can speak for Highland Pines.
And then we got Highland Pines West.
Okay.
Oh.
There's actually 3 neighborhoods that comprise
Okay.
our area.
Go right ahead. You'll have up to 10 minutes.
Okay. Good evening, Mr. Mayor, Vice Mayor, and all City Council members. My name is Martin Cochran, and I'm representing the Hollands Pine neighborhood. At this time, I'd like to ask all those in attendance to support the neighborhood, please stand up. What we are asking for at this time is a 60-day deferral. While deferral is not the ideal situation, we feel it is necessary to do so in order to preserve our neighborhood. We're asking for this deferral based on the following reasons. Number 1, residents north of 2821 Bald Eagle Drive did not receive notification of the applicant's CUP as mandated by state law. They did not receive notification of the Planning Commission meeting last month, nor did they receive notification of this council meeting today. Number 2, we do not have the benefit of an HOA or a civic league. Therefore, it has been difficult to disseminate the pertinent information to our neighbors. In lieu of a formal governing body, we formed a core group of neighbors to try and inform them as best as possible. Briefly, I'll outline the way information has come to us, and you will be able to see how difficult it has been to inform our residents. In August 2014, we learned of this project only because of the CUP signs erected on the applicant's property. The applicant never reached out to us prior to the signs being erected. September 14, the core group met with the applicant and Ms. Henley. We were at the understanding then that the applicant would regularly update the residents. However, we never received any correspondence from the applicant for nearly 7 months. Even then, the information was provided in a piecemeal, disorganized fashion and only given to us after specific requests. The core group received the final plans and the TIA in late April. The applicant then submitted final exhibit plans on May 8th and the overflow parking layout on May 11th. At this point, we did not have an opportunity to inform the neighborhood before the meeting with the city staff on May 22nd. After a very fruitful meeting with city staff, we were wanting to gather our neighborhoods and inform them of how things were unfolding. Not 4 days later, we were in a meeting with city staff and the applicant. At that point, we still wanted to meet with the neighborhood to disseminate information. It was again strongly requested that the neighborhood meet 9 days later with the church and city staff. We again had no time to inform our neighborhood what was going on. We waited patiently for 7 months and then have been rushed into trying to make decisions and informing neighbors. As soon as we get information, we are expected to respond immediately. Meanwhile, we've been waiting patiently. We received final conditions less than 24 hours prior to planning hearing last month. Originally, the demolition of house on 2821 was phase 3 of the church's expansion. In the first community meeting with the pastor, he stated that he would take the house demo off of the project since it was a huge issue for the community. So as a community, we moved forward with the understanding that that would not be an option. The plan has changed dramatically since the Planning Commission meeting last week. Now that's has become a major option. I guess it is an option that was it's been an updated CUP, is that house will be raised and turned into a parking lot. That originally was a 20-year out plan, again, part of phase 3. So the big question then is, what will be the purpose of the deferral? We would like to see true concessions, not city planning mandated requirements. Number 2, we would like to see enforceable CUP conditions. The current CUP has expired as of 10/14, and there's been no enforcement. How can the neighborhood feel comfortable moving forward when the current CUP is not managed properly? Number 3, we would like to have an opportunity to discuss other options. 4 members of the Planning Commission thought the idea of using the gravel lot, overflow lot across the street, which the church owns, as a long-term solution. Since the applicant has committed to using a shuttle service during the construction process to shuttle members from the gravel lot across the street to the church, then maybe it can truly be a long-term solution and we can save the house and the neighborhood. We have been told by the developer that the lot across the street can hold up to 200 cars. Why not have all the parking together in that lot across the street, again, save the house and the neighborhood? And then, because the house, even if they tear down the house at 2821, they're still not going to have enough parking. It's only based on the city's 5-to-1 numbers, and that's the city code, but based on the TIA report, their numbers are more like 2.3 members per car. That means they would need 363 spaces. The current development plus the house being raised gives them 250 spots, so they're still going to be short 113 spaces. Number 4, the pastor has mentioned instituting additional services in the future if they reach capacity. If that was a legitimate option, why isn't this done now if they're so overcrowded? Number 5, we would like careful consideration in this expansion. There seems to be many unknowns. The church has agreed to alter programming and provide shuttle parking service. However, we've not seen any specific plans. It has been stated that the phase 3 is completed, that after phase 3 is completed and they reach capacity, the church will have to move. We will then have a 27,000 square foot building and a parking lot in our neighborhood. We feel like we've waited patiently while the church worked out on their plans, and now the project is placed in a fast forward motion and without careful consideration being taken. As we have said all along, we have no problem with the church. We have no problem with the church expansion. Our main concern is the preservation of our neighborhood. We'd like the neighborhood to remain a neighborhood and not have a parking lot in the middle of it. We would like our neighborhood to maintain the integrity we all moved here for. Thank you for your time.
Thank you for your comments. Next speaker, please.
Chuck Haley and Andrew Jackson.
We welcome you today, sir. And you're representing?
No, that's
me.
These
Oh,
are 2 speakers.
okay. Thank you. Thank you.
Mr. Mayor, council people. I'm a resident there behind the neighborhood where Piney Grove is. I see their the congestion they have around there. I know that the idea of a parking lot there, I'm in favor of it. I think it's a good idea. Come across a document which doesn't have anything really too earth-shaking about it. It's presented by the Ethics and Religious Liberty Commission from the Southern Baptist Convention. And just a few things as I was reading through this, it struck me all the things that were here, that positive influences that churches have on community can be said specifically about Piney Grove Baptist Church. I've been there just once to worship with them. Might go back again. Amen. Churches have a direct economic benefit on their community, providing local jobs, variety of social benefits for their churches, also for their businesses. They increase revenue by drawing people to their area, just like good school systems draw people. They increase the value of the family as well as the individual. They work on local decision-making processes with organizations such as this we have tonight. Also, churches provide certain social benefits, such as helping the poor and the vulnerable, which Piney Grove Baptist Church does, as well as improving marriage relationships, decreasing violence among women, increasing moral community obligations, promoting charitable contributions, increasing one's duty and service to others. There's a group, Trito and Casino, in 2003 that did a study that talked about the monetary distinction of a church and a community, and in their community they estimated that every metropolitan church would account for approximately $115,000 pay that would go to a social servant if they needed to replace the work done by that church. Another study done in '99 stated that in the city of Philadelphia, if they combined all the churches together, it would be $230 million of wages that would go towards social workers that were being done for free by that church, by those churches. Churches also promote education, civic engagement. Students who attend church usually do better on classes, go further in their education, are more frequently attend their classes, in fact, are 5 times less likely to skip school. Also, churches help decrease crime in an area. The very presence of a church decreases crime, the occurrence of crime, and the deviance in the community and local church. I have a lot more to say, but I see my yellow buttons flashing. So let me just say, I think it's a good idea, and it makes sense, and the parking is just going to leave room on the road. When I go to church on Sunday mornings, I'm dodging those cars. It'd be nice to go through a clear road instead and let them have their parking lot. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Go right ahead.
Would you like to talk to this?
No, you got a question?
Yes.
Where you live, is that on this map here?
It is. Not that map. There we go. Right here.
Thank you.
Thank you. Next speaker, please.
Andrew Jackson, and the next is Al Whitehurst, Jr.
Mr. Jackson, we welcome you tonight, sir.
Good evening, Mayor, Vice Mayor, City Manager, City Attorney, Council members. As you know, I am a community advocate. Now, I reach across the city, and I have relations, I guess, with about 87 churches in the city. And I was kind of thrown off kilter because I've never seen in this city, I've never seen community opposition such as this toward a church. And I wasn't going to speak until we stood for the flag. And it talked about, with our hand to our heart, one nation under God, which speaks to the church. And this country was founded upon an ideal that the church had its freedom over here and separated it from all the other things. And I wonder what has happened to that. Especially when here is a church in a community that was there before this community existed. The newcomers now want to move the permanent resident out. Something doesn't make a lot of sense there to me. To the extent that I saw emails coming in and going to churches across the city questioning what was the issue here? Was it a parking lot? Was it a church? Was it property values? What is it that now would take a community in this city? I don't know how many churches we got across this city, but it'd be hard to go too far without finding a church. We have a lot of churches here. What is it with this community and this church? That would be the question. But I would say to this body, when it comes to one nation under God, we're talking about God's house. And it's not invading anybody else's property. It's what they're doing on their own property. Property that was here before the community. I would say we look at the rights of the church. Thank you.
Thank you. Next speaker, please.
Al Whitehurst, and he is the other representative of Holland Pines West.
We welcome you tonight, and you'll have that excess time since you're representing a group.
Thank you. Good evening, everyone. I've got two main, well, first off, I've lived in Holland Pines West now for, this October will mark 20 years. Two main topics, buffering and a compromise proposal that we would like to present to council to take a look at tonight. First, the buffering. Now, of course, you've been asked for a deferral, and I have to say I'm in support of that, because I think that would give us more time to try to work out a compromise. But in any event, if you choose not to defer tonight, and you go ahead and vote yea or nay on the project, on the buffering issue on this, I think maybe I learned a little bit this afternoon watching the informal session on television. I want to make sure I'm communicating correctly to you all. We're expecting Category 6 at Bald Eagle facing the street. And we would ask for as much buffering as possible as you can put at that street. Category 4 is my understanding, along where homes will be. And that's because Category 6 would involve, if you did a Category 6, you'd have a double fence issue. What I would say is if it's possible to have the best plantings you can have in a 6, but not have to have the fence there, there's some sort of flexibility there. Basically, as much buffering as we can get if you're going to approve this plan. You know, there are 9 homes that are going to be directly impacted by this expansion if it's approved, and 2 of them will wake up one morning and their next door neighbor is going to be a parking lot. Now, it seems to me that there's a reasonable expectation that when one buys a home in any city, that the house next to them is going to remain a home. This isn't eminent domain, and this isn't somebody moving next to an airport and then complaining about the noise. This is someone who has bought a home in a small, quiet community, and the home next to him is going to be a parking lot. It seems to me also it's the duty of our local governments to help ensure that reasonable expectation be a reality. So we're asking for as much buffering as possible, because these homes are going to go down in value. There's no question about that. No one wants to buy a home if they don't have to that backs up to a parking lot. If I was going to buy a house and I pull up and that house backs up to a parking lot, I'm not even going to get out of the car to go look at it. I'm going to say next, let's look at the next. So they're going to have some unique issues, and their quality of life is going to be impacted as well. Noise, privacy, lights from the cars, lights at night. It's going to impact their quality of life, and I think that's a very reasonable, serious issue to factor into the equation here. So if you do vote to approve the plan, we'd ask that you really beef up the buffering. All right, on to the compromise proposal that we'd like to make tonight. First off, you know, some of our opposition has been characterized as we're a moving target and we're impossible to deal with. Of course, we have hundreds of people that live in these 2 neighborhoods. Different people have different thoughts, different agendas, as you all well know. Getting 10, 15 people to agree to anything is difficult enough, let alone hundreds of people. But I like to characterize it as it's not as much an issue of a moving target as it is there's multiple issues here. And sometimes when you adjust and try to deal with one of them, there's unintended consequences that negatively impact another. In fact, Holland Oaks really wasn't involved in this until a second entrance into the church was put into the plan, and that may affect traffic coming, to get us some type of unintended consequences. But I've got to say, after the Planning Commission, and kind of trying to read the tea leaves, and trying to deal with reality and not wanting to attack windmills, we pretty much have come to the conclusion that this plan, in one form or another, is probably going to be reality. And our compromise is this: allow the church to have everything they wanted in their CUP that they presented to the Planning Commission. Everything. Just don't tear the house down. Don't do what the Planning Commission added. Don't tear the house down. Give them everything else. Give them everything they asked for in their CUP. Just don't tear the house down. Because when you tear that house down, I know you can dress it up, and I say give us as much buffering as possible, but it's still a parking lot. And this is unique. You're carving, in this proposal, it's not just exterior. You're carving a parking lot into an existing neighborhood where a parking lot will be in place of a house that sits between two homes. That's a lot. So it changes the look and character of the neighborhood by taking that house down. Now, question is, what's the biggest issue here? Well, the biggest issue without question is safety for everyone. Churchgoers, people who live in our neighborhood. Safety is the biggest issue, and a very reasonable question to ask me is, well, if you're so concerned about safety, why do you not want those parking spots there? And the answer to that is quite simple. It still does not provide enough parking if you tear the house down. You will still have over 100 cars looking for a place to park. 250-some people walking from those cars trying to get to the church. That's if you tear the house down. If you tear the house down, it adds about 69 spots, parking spots. 38 of those spots are compact spots. You're not going to get 69 cars in there. And you're going to have a lot of people not going to park there anyway because they don't want to risk getting the doors dinged. I don't blame them. This 5-to-1, I call it fantasy and out-of-touch code. 5 people per car. I don't know how that was ever arrived at. It doesn't even begin to approach the common sense test, let alone reality. We've done multiple counts on multiple Sundays, and we've even gone by the church's numbers. And it equates roughly to 2.3 people per car is what we're realizing from multiple. Give you a classic example. The Sunday before the Planning Commission, we went out and counted. We came up with 217 cars. The church said at the Planning Commission, they counted that Sunday also, and they counted 187. All right, let's go by their numbers. 187 cars. If the 5-to-1 code was correct, there would have only been 84 cars there, but there was 187. The code was only off by 122%. I would stand on my head if I could get y'all's attention on that. The difference here between the code and reality is the difference between a project that looks pretty good and a potential nightmare that we're all going to have to live with.
Well, that's true.
Where are they going to park? Well, you know, we've heard a lot of talk about we're against people parking in our neighborhood. No. They've been parking in our neighborhood for years. You might have some neighbors that don't like it, but by and large, what we do have a problem with is if you're going to tear the house down and then still park in the neighborhood, which is what they're going to have to do, and across the street, because you got 113. You're missing 113 parking spots if they have a full capacity. We say park in the neighborhood in our compromise thing. You park in our neighborhood. I grew up and was born and raised in Norfolk. I went to Larchmont Methodist. That church had 0 parking lot. Has 0 parking lot. It's 100% on-street parking. Colley Avenue, Jamestown Crescent. It works out fine. We would much rather have that than tearing down the house and creating a permanent eyesore in our neighborhood. You know, I walk for exercise each night, and I walk the circle, Chestwood Bend, and then Bald Eagle, And last night when I was walking, I just did some simple pacing, and it occurred to me that you could park 70 to 80 cars easily within relative close proximity to the church. It's not perfect, but neither is tearing down the house because it still doesn't allot you the necessary parking spaces. Pastor has indicated that they have room to perhaps park as many as 150 cars across Holland Road. If you put some crush and run down there, implement the shuttle, because you're going to have to do that during the transition, during construction anyway. And construction could take up to 2 years, we've been told. So a combination of parking on our streets, they may not even have to park across the street. And then with the 181 spots they'd have without tearing the house down. But that's our thing. Something can be worked out here where we don't have to tear the house down. It doesn't add enough spots to make really that much of a difference in how this will actually unfold. And it seems to me we can come up with a lot better than this, to tear a house down inside a neighborhood, inside the internal part of a community. But if you got to, please beef it up. That's all I got to say.
Thank you for your comments. Yes, please.
Mr. White.
You have 2 questions, please.
Thank you for your presentation. So you watched this afternoon.
Yes,
and
ma'am.
you've heard about the additional changes that were
Right.
presented.
Right.
And of course, one is to have a fence across the back. And
Right.
I would think with the fence and then the others are yards, people are not going to want to park on the street and then walk all the way around.
Well, that's a good question, but they do now.
Is there
Yeah, what they do is they walk around. Now, there is not a sidewalk when they get to Chestwood Drive, but there is a little grassy area, and that's what they're doing now. We routinely have 40 cars in our neighborhood parked.
So there's a fence now so that they're not walking through?
You know what, I'm not sure if there's a fence that runs behind that, some do walk through, apparently. But I don't know 100% sure. I know tons
I
of
was
people
out
walk.
there Friday, I didn't see a fence, so I would think that they would cut through.
I don't think most cut through. Most walk through, a good number that I have seen. They walk over to the side and come up Chestwood Drive and then walk in that way. And have been doing so for years.
Shannon?
Mr. Whitehurst?
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you for coming out.
Thank you.
I was out earlier today,
Mhm.
and you had mentioned a little earlier about the original CUP, that you were comfortable going with what exactly they had asked for in that.
Right.
In that original CUP, the forest, or the trees behind the house in question,
Mhm.
were those trees demolished with the original CUP as well?
Well, up to a certain degree, I think there's a buffer between the house and the back. There'll still be some degree of a backyard, is my understanding. And then the parking lot would start.
Okay. I was just questioning, and because you had mentioned you didn't want people didn't want a parking lot in their backyard, and there is a residence there.
You're still going to have
and
people.
there would still be a parking lot in their
You're
backyard.
going to still have
but
homes that will be directly impacted with the parking lot, even with the original CUP. This is a tough issue. There's no question about it, and there's a lot of compromise. That's why we've put this compromise together and see what happens.
We thank you very much.
Thank you.
Next speaker, please.
Regina Valentine and Buddy Sparrow.
We welcome you tonight, ma'am.
Good evening, council. Thank you for your time. My name's Regina Rossi Valentine. I'm a 13-year resident of Holland Pines, and although not currently active, I do hold a real estate license and practice for many years with a local builder. I've also worked in the church for 35 years and currently hold 2 positions in the music ministry at 2 different churches in Virginia Beach of different denominations. The late Maya Angelou, who I have a great admiration for and had the privilege to hear speak in person, has been quoted as saying, "We teach people how to treat us. What we tolerate and accept is the syllabus for someone to follow." We as a community have taught the members and the clergy of Piney Grove Baptist Church that we are okay with them parking on our streets because they've done so for years, and that's true. And not once to my knowledge until this CUP came up a year ago with the concern of additional parking on our streets has anyone in our community ever complained about it. We've been very tolerant, and we've been very, very good neighbors to the church. That does not translate, however, into us being okay with a residential home being taken down and a parking lot being put into the middle of our community. It's 2 completely different things. There's a term in real estate called caveat emptor, which means let the buyer beware. It's up to the buyer to do their research and do their due diligence when they're purchasing a home, to know what surrounds it so that they can make a wise purchase decision. Dave and Donna Willie, whose home directly backs up to 2821, did their due diligence 20 years ago when they purchased that home, and they asked about the wooded lot behind that house, and they were told it was connected to the residential home right in front of it. So why would anyone think to go any further? Even me as a real estate agent, I would think, oh, okay, it's residential. But none of us in this core group, and I would venture to speak for most of the community, none of us knew that that house and the wooded lot behind it were zoned agricultural. And so I wouldn't think that anyone would be concerned with that house ever being torn up when they made the decision to purchase their homes surrounding that house. So that's a huge concern there. Additionally, as a real estate agent, I have to disagree. Property values will be impacted. When I worked for a local builder, every home that we sold in the community as new construction was priced accordingly based on location. Villas at Bellamy on Princess Anne Road is right next to 2 churches. And I can tell you that every home that backed up to the church or backed up to the church's parking lot, their price was lowered to attract a buyer that was willing to pay less and put up with the view that was not as aesthetic. So it is going to affect our property values. It's a trickle-down effect through the whole community. And just in closing, because I don't want to be repetitive, but to quote Maya Angelou again, we do the best with what we know, and when we know better, we do better. So what do we know now? We do know that the church has not been able to accommodate their current parking and has utilized our streets to do so. And we agree they need to expand, but they need to
Thank you very much
expand.
for your comments. We appreciate you coming down. Next speaker, please.
Buddy Sparrow and Brian Heatwell.
We welcome you tonight, sir.
Good evening. Thank you for allowing me this opportunity to speak. So, my name is Buddy Sparrow. I've been a 13-year neighbor of Piney Grove Baptist Church, and I have always supported the church, their mission, their vision, and I support their current desire to expand their mission and their noble works. Unfortunately, what I can't support is the recommendation from the Planning Commission to remove the house at 2821 Bald Eagle Road. The removal of that, as has been said before, the removal of that house will effectively bisect an existing neighborhood. You can, as I said before, you can look around, see lots of churches in Virginia Beach, lots of them abut neighborhoods. I would say it's probably difficult to find one where the parking lot was inserted into an existing neighborhood after the fact. I've not been able to find very many in that example. For my house in particular, this would result in me being wrapped by parking on 2 sides. I purchased my home 13 years ago, knowing the church was behind me, welcoming the church as my neighbor. I did not ever expect to see the house beside me torn down. Obviously, having the parking lot beside me raises some concerns. I have concerns about heat, drainage, noise, as some folks have said, aesthetics, and future marketability. I can see, as Regina said, if I ever did decide to sell my home, that somebody looking to buy my home would look and see, okay, there's parking lots on 2 sides of this house. I'm not interested. As Al said, he probably wouldn't even get out of the car. Initially, as has been said before, the applicants worked with us last fall and promised us that they would take this house demolition off the table. So currently, what's before the council is a recommendation from the Planning Commission. It's not set in stone. And what I would encourage the applicant to do is to uphold their promise to the community from last fall and not proceed with this recommendation from the Planning Commission, and as Al Whitehurst stated, proceed with their original CUP. Short of that, I'm here also to support a 60-day deferral in order to work with the applicant to come to any additional compromises we may be able to work out. My light is blinking.
Well, we thank you for coming down. Next speaker, please.
Brian Hitwell. And the next is Monica Staley.
We welcome you today, sir.
Thank you. Good evening, guys. First off, thank you for letting us come here today and talk to you. And again, Bren Hitchcock is my name. I know a lot of you all. I'm very glad we had the opportunity to talk to you. I'm a builder here in town and routinely dealt with planning. Actually had a great speech on here, and then my wife messed with it like 5 minutes ago, so forgive me.
Trouble when you get.
But again,
You're
I feel
getting in
planning
trouble.
on a regular basis. But I feel that we have not been afforded our due process with the planning department to get this done correctly. That's their job. You see how many people are here in this room today? It's because there's a conflict here and planning hasn't done the job correctly. That's why I'm really pushing for a 60-day deferment. This needs to go back to planning and be managed and oversighted correctly. There's been a lot of issues with this. It's bounced around nonstop. Part of the reason I think this hasn't been handled correctly is because Holland Pines, Holland Oaks, the entire neighborhood, we're not represented by an HOA or a civic league or any type of organization. So yes, we do seem like a moving target, and we haven't been given enough time to organize in a proper fashion to address the concerns. So again, basically, we really want that 60-day deferment. Planning's job is to make sure that a conditional use permit falls within reasonable guidelines. Again, this is an agricultural zone. It's a conditional use permit. So part of that is judgment that gets used. It's not straight code enforcement. They say the concession's been made to the neighborhood, but the only changes that have been proposed that they propose has been what has been asked by planning. None of this has been our conditions. It's all been pushed through planning. They also, again, we have no desire to be bad neighbors. We just want a church to be respectful of our concerns with regards to potential hurting property values with a parking lot in our neighborhood. I really got a good laugh earlier when he said, you know, we're going to beautify your neighborhood by putting a parking lot in. That was really quite entertaining earlier. We'd like, again, to go back to the original CUP. We'd like to see the house stay, and again, give us a 60-day deferment so we can actually get this done appropriately and in a manner where we can all get along. The church has been a good neighbor for a long time. Do you guys have any questions for us?
We thank you. Next speaker, please.
Monica Staley, Donna Wiley.
We welcome you tonight, ma'am.
Good evening. My name is Monica Staley. I'm a resident of Holland Pines. I'm here tonight, like many of my fellow residents, to support the church in their expansion. But I also share the same concerns about the present proposal. In the interest of time and efficiency, I'd like to go through and take this opportunity to respond to some of Pastor Williams' comments that he's made throughout this planning process and the concessions that he's said that he's made on behalf of the neighborhood. While we, the neighborhood, appreciate those measures, I think it's important to clarify that many of those citing concessions are actually city mandated by code, ordinance, regulation, and they're not in effect concessions to the residents. If they're required by law and he's required to implement them, again, they are not concessions to the neighborhood. One of those is the buffer. I know a few speakers have already mentioned the buffer, so I'll try to move through that quickly. The parking lot, if in effect it's put in at 2821 Bald Eagle Road, the buffer there is of paramount importance for preserving the tranquility, the peaceful nature of the neighborhood that everyone, I feel that all residents have bought their homes in order to live in that sort of community. At the discussions at the Planning Commission, the commission members recommended that the parking lot be buffered with Category 6 buffering with Category 4. Now, in those discussions, they spoke of the whole perimeter of the parking lot, not just Bald Eagle Road. So right now, there would be left the sides without appropriate buffering. The exact words, you can look in the minutes, I believe, or something to the effect of, we want to blend this parking lot into the neighborhood so that you won't even know that it's there. But right now with Category 4 buffering, it's not to the degree that would blend this parking lot into the neighborhood or provide sufficient coverage. Another one of the concessions that Pastor Williams has mentioned is that no parking signs will be at the entrance of Chesapeake Drive. While again, the residents certainly appreciate the fact that the signs are going up, these are part of the Holland Road expansion, not the church expansion. And although Pastor Williams has previously stated that the church is elected to install those signs, the residents have confirmed with planning and traffic that those were directed by those departments. And we'd be happy to provide that documentation. On multiple occasions, Pastor Williams has also mentioned that he's going above and beyond with the drainage for the project and the runoff that would flow to Holland Road rather than to the homes that are adjacent to the property. The Virginia Department of Environmental Quality has informed the residents that this
positive drainage is actually a legally mandated matter. There are certain regulations that the church will have to follow in order to get even the permits to do the construction. Again, we have those relevant ordinances and regulations that we would be happy to provide. While the residents have asked for specific concessions, the church has declined to implement some of those. And
Thank you
other-
very much for your comments. Next speaker, please.
Donna Wiley, Lisa Hartman.
We welcome you tonight. You're welcome.
Good afternoon, Mayor Presidents and council members. My name is Donna Willie, and I have been a resident of Holland Pines for almost 20 years. We bought our home on a peaceful tree-lined street next to our home with a beautiful wooded backyard. We were seeking a home that had a spacious backyard and plenty of trees that didn't directly closely back up to a building or any vacant lot for that matter. We did our research and called the city to inquire about the woods behind our home and was assured that the wooded lot behind our home was in fact the backyard of the residential home residing next to my property. During our research selecting our home, we really liked a few other homes that backed up to a wooded lot. We did our research with those homes, inquiring if the woods could be developed later down the road, and were told that the Southeastern Expressway would eventually cut through the woods behind those homes we were looking at. Still hasn't happened. So we continued our search until we found the perfect home, which has been my home for almost 20 years. After 20 years after making our home, our house for our family with many memories in our dreams, and our vision for our home is fading. Not at any time did my husband or I ever imagine that a home next to me would be considered for demolition to make way for a paved parking lot. I don't think any of you sitting up here tonight ever considered this could happen to your home. We never imagined that a home in a residential subdivision could be zoned AG2, and that is something that we never checked in prior to buying our house, but I wonder how many have to check the zoning code for all homes that surround them when they are looking to purchase a home in a beautiful residential neighborhood. I understand the building a parking lot on property zone AG2 is allowed, but it doesn't have to be approved. This is a very unique situation. The applicant just purchased the home next to me over a year ago. It hasn't been a vacant lot or undeveloped lot. It was a land with a home. There are so many other options that could be implemented to alleviate the need for parking, for this parking lot to interject between two homes. There are many churches that back up to homes. However, these are on larger lots, self-contained, and have a clear defined property line backing up to homes, not coming in between two homes. I'm not a real estate agent, but I can guarantee you that my home value will drop if this parking lot is built beside and behind my home. Pastor Williams mentioned last year at his meeting that he was told that these homes will not drop in value. However, he would and could not reveal his source. Really, I promise you that no appraiser or agent would ever put that in writing. The pastor also mentioned several times at the hearing that we all bought our homes and built them around his church. Well, if he's claiming that, then I guess he feels he owns all the land in our community. However, I don't see it that way. I see a house beside me right now, not a church and not a parking lot. He was right about one thing, and that is we all bought our homes knowing that the church was there, and that that didn't deter any of us from buying a home there. This is about land development. It is not about race, color, or religion. There are two separate landowners here, and one of them is being a large entity. One should not have entitlement over the other. Having a parking lot will not only affect my home and value, but it will also encumber the
We thank you very much for your comments. Thank you. Next speaker, please.
Wait, can she point out her home?
Ma'am, you got a question?
Can you point out exactly on that map where you are?
I am right here in the corner. In this,
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
He's right next door.
Lisa Hartman and George Mann.
We welcome you tonight.
Thank you. I'm actually representing Christopher Farms Phase 3 Homeowners Association. I'm the vice president of the association, and I'm speaking on behalf of the Homeowners Association.
Okay, are you a neighbor?
Are
Are you located close to it? Are you attaching that property?
We're not attached. However, they use Christopher Farms Elementary as a shuttling site for churchgoers. And I just am speaking regarding the safety of that, and also the Holland Road project where it affects us. They stop the traffic.
Okay, go right ahead.
Sorry, I'm sorry.
You convinced me.
Okay. I'm concerned with the current plan. It affects our community in several ways, our Christopher Farms community in several ways. One, by using Christopher Farms Elementary School as a shuttle site,
where they park at Christopher Farms Elementary a couple times a year and they shuttle people to their church. Well, I understand there are times of year like Christmas, Mother's Day, Easter, where of course they're going to have large amounts of people coming to the church, and we have no issue with that. I'm concerned that it's going to happen on a weekly basis, and that is not stipulated in the conditions of the application, that they can only use it a couple times a year. A couple times a year is okay. Weekly is going to be problematic because the only access to Christopher Farms Elementary is through our neighborhood. There is no access from Holland Road to the elementary school. So they ride by our kids riding bikes, people walking dogs, joggers, everything. The second is that using the property across the street already affects us as a community from the time prior to the start time of the services until late in the afternoon, where people are still leaving. As they're across the street, they stop the traffic for people to safely cross with the crossing guard. I'm concerned that the $31 million Holland.
Representation of Christopher Farms, y'all have had a meeting to discuss this?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Yes, sir. And I've spoke with the president, and
Okay.
we're fine. I'm the vice president, so. We're concerned because of the $31 million Holland Road project, which is currently ongoing, won't be done until 2017, will also be affected in the future. It's going to be a 45 mile per hour divided 4-lane highway. And by using the site across the street, it is going to, they're going to have to stop the traffic. Could you imagine stopping the traffic on Great Neck Road every time, when people are parking across the street? It's going to be problematic for traffic and not necessarily safe for the churchgoers also. And it's going to be a couple years before even the Holland Road project is even complete. And I'm imagining that during that transition where they're building the church and they're building the road, there's going to be further impacts. In 2000, I'm concerned about also their compliance with the conditional use permits that they have, because the current conditional use permit expired for the trailer that they have expired in 2009. So I can share some of the neighbors' concerns with how it's going to look. But the biggest thing is that they haven't been compliant with the conditional use permit, that it not only expired, but they were supposed to buffer the trailer with permanent evergreens. I'm losing my words, I'm sorry. They're 24 inches in height at the time of planting. Currently, there's only 2 to 4 plants that are barely 24 inches high. So that's kind of an eyesore to the community. And they haven't been held accountable to meet those conditions. So the plan for the 250 parking spaces for an 835-seat sanctuary is just not actual. They currently have 400 seats, and they have between 180 and 190 cars weekly. So the reality of 167 spaces, as the law provides, while it meets that, it doesn't cover the reality of the situation. And then the community, the neighbors and the community is asked to share that burden with them. And there's no other, we just don't do that with land use and rights, and because you're infringing then on the community, the neighbors, and then the community as a whole. At an 835 person sanctuary, even at 80% full, which for a church it kind of feels full because you don't sit next to people you don't know, that's 668 people divided by the 2.3 people per car. That's way too much math, I'm sure. It's 290 spaces, and they only have 250, so they're going to have at least, at minimum, 40 spaces overflowing either into the neighborhood, across the street where the crossing guard is going to stop the traffic. It's going to affect everything. And there's a $31 million VDOT project that our tax dollars are paying for, but traffic will be greatly impacted for a very long time throughout that day. Additionally, the adjacent lot that they purchased last year was zoned AG. It was zoned agricultural. Since they are 2 separate parcels, the agricultural parcel that they purchased last year, a conditional use is not a parking lot. A conditional use is a church, but a parking lot is going on that. And a parking lot is not a conditional use for an ag property. It was mentioned at the Planning Commission that those lines would be dissolved but it should have been done before this has taken place. A lot of these issues with traffic weren't addressed. When we went to the Planning Commission, it was a lot of, we're not sure if this, if that, and if they do shuttle people from across the street, there is not direct access into the church. So people would have to, like a shuttle bus would have to pull out of there and go down around, either make a U-turn or go back into the neighborhood and around. And it impacts traffic, it impacts the community, not just Christopher Farms. I am very concerned with the amount of traffic coming through Christopher Farms. If one of the conditions placed upon them using that as a shuttle site is not limited to just a few annually, and we can completely understand that. I myself have done a lot of research regarding Piney Grove Baptist Church, the history. They were actually directly adjacent to some of our current homeowners and Christopher Farms Elementary School, and I appreciate everything that they have done in this community to help the people, but I just want them to be responsible for also what they currently have, to be able to house the people on the lot that they have. They can scale back a little to provide a few more parking spaces to be able to accommodate it within their space instead of affecting the community. I guess that's it. Do you have any questions
Okay.
for me? I rattled those
If
numbers
we do have some questions.
really fast. Yes, ma'am.
Ms. Hartman.
Yes, ma'am.
I called you after you spoke at the Planning Commission meeting.
Yes,
and
ma'am.
explained to you that this application in no way says that they will be shuttling from Christopher Farms.
Correct, correct, and I understood that, but they have
In the
used it and
past,
they
I
can.
believe they said that they have used Christopher Farms as a shuttle site maybe one time in the past, but that this application, when it talks about their shuttling, it's across the road from their property, across the road, and Christopher Farms is in no way involved.
I completely understand that the majority of the shuttling will be done back and forth across Holland
All
Road.
the shuttling.
But I just wanted to make sure that if they do use Christopher Farms, and like I said, I have no problem if they do it a few times a year. I just don't
Well,
want
we
it to
thank
be
you
a
for your
repetitive
comment.
thing.
Just to make sure, and of course, this conditional use permit for the Day Watch trailer was awarded in 2009 with a 5-year time limit.
Correct, which was up in October.
This application was applied for last summer, and that renewal is a part of this application, and that's why they've been allowed to continue, because this application is pending.
Okay, because that was confusing, because I saw an email from Pastor Williams that he said that the church is in no way responsible for meeting those conditions.
All right, Ms. Henley got you straight. Thank you very much. Next speaker, please.
George Mims, and he's representing SeaTac Community Civic League.
Well, since I let Christopher Farms speak, you're welcome, sir. We're glad to have you here.
Good evening to everyone. I'm E. George Mims. Let me stipulate why SeaTac has an interest. Those from SeaTac journeyed from Piney Grove originally. Piney Grove is 145 years old. Mount Olive is only 121. So to answer anybody's concern of how SeaTac has to do with this, our culture, the circumstances we lived under, and this was old Princess Anne County. And in old Princess Anne County, people were spread out. So they traveled a distance to go to church, and even when they moved, they still maintained their home church. I live in SeaTac, but my home church is right there, Mount Zion, which is sister church to Piney Grove. I spent quite a bit of time at Piney Grove with my mother, my grandmother. That was our fellowship. Church to us may mean a little more than it does to some others. It has been our life. It was all we had to answer that perspective. And members of the 106-year-old SeaTac Civic League are still members of Piney Grove, Mount Zion, St. Mark, depending on where their grandmama or whoever started them, a lot of them stayed connected. That's why. It may seem odd to those who haven't lived our life experience, but for us it's normal. I thank you. To answer the mayor's issue. Let me just and I hope that didn't take all my time clearing it. You know, you the mayor, you the chair, you raised the issue as a point of order. I'm gonna press
Just
it.
watch those lights, Mr. Bill.
Okay. Now, on the issue of 45 mile an hour when people crossing the road, go right down Princess Anne Road to the Catholic Church. They stop traffic when it's coming across. On the issue of I bought my home and I didn't expect this gonna be, go back and check zoning laws as far as Virginia. It doesn't matter who, buy what. You are not guaranteed the zone to continue. That is the law in Virginia. Now, I also graduated from real estate school in 1978 for the issue of real estate. They said this is a land development. Yes, read the Constitution of Virginia. We only have one government. This is the city council for the city of Virginia Beach. That is the planning commission for the city of Virginia Beach. The signs were posted. The church did what it was supposed to do to post the signs. It did what the city planning department told them to do. Now, who didn't see the sign, didn't notice the sign? I'm gonna leave that alone. Now, we can't have an official planning commission that takes people through whatever they need to go through, and then have an unofficial planning commission that want to add stipulations and proffers and everything afterwards. Now, when we buy our land, the church can't come in nobody's yard and tell you, hey, your flower bed in the front and no flower bed in the back because we don't like that particular kind of flower. When you buy land in America, you get a bundle of rights. And except for what the government controls, the planning commission, that's all that church has to comply with. Now, government cannot reach inside the church and tell them how to program. That's a prerogative right of the church because it's First Amendment. Every church has it. So don't seek to take it away from this church. The Planning Commission approved it. I would ask that council go with the Planning Commission. That church has been here 145 years. I've heard people say 10 years, 20 years, whatever. Church been there 145 years and has supported this jurisdiction from Princess Anne County all the way to the city with workers, and one I know in particular who served the city as a city worker for 40-some years. We help make this what people want to come to. The church is the rock. And it has done great for the city of Virginia Beach. And I would not just ask this for this church, but any of these churches that are 100 years old. I think some degree of reverence should be there. Now, one other thing I want to mention before I forget. I hear people say 2.3 people per car. I'm just going to touch on it now. You will look in the records of the arena. The traffic consultant that the city paid almost $1 million or whatever, they say 2.7 people per car. So when I heard that, that's very interesting. But with that said, ladies and gentlemen, on behalf of CTAC and all of our members of CTAC who are parishioners of Piney Grove, I would ask that you give the church your blessing as the Planning Commission has done its job. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Mims. Next speaker, please.
Carlo Geronimo and Mehdi Alexander.
We welcome you tonight, sir.
My name's Carlo Geronimo, and I am a 20-year resident of Holland Pines. I'm not going to stand up here. I'm not a practicing preacher, and I'm not going to preach to the board. But I've heard a lot of comments like opposition and those people, and they don't want us here. And it really isn't that. I mean, I'm here because I've been here one other time since I've lived here. And it was because they were going to rezone my kids from Kellam High School over to Lansdowne High School. And everyone said it's going to impact our property values, and I was told it wasn't. But now, when I get my assessments, I'm told my school district is different and that it's not as popular. So there's a lot of personal things that I think happen besides all of the planning and all of the zoning requirements and all of the aesthetics that they're going to build around the street. If my family grew and my house wasn't big enough, I would have to move to a new house. If they got too big and I came here and I proposed that I could pave my yard and put up a big fence around the front and put bushes around it to make the neighbors not see my 20 cars that my 20 kids and my family had. The board would tell me, you're out of your mind because you can't put a big fence in the front yard. But yet we're going to let a fence border my neighbors' homes on the sides of their homes and aesthetics. I don't know where all of y'all live, but from my house, I drive past Piney Grove every single day, and I've never once opposed anyone there. I've never done anything that has negatively impacted the church. I've never done anything except for wave and say hello to people on their way in the morning. So I don't feel like I've opposed anyone individually there, but I do know that driving past that church, the aesthetics outside of that church now are not the aesthetics that I would want to see driving in my neighborhood. And I see that fence in 3 or 4 years as being a broken down, beat up fence with bushes that are dead and grass that hasn't been maintained. And that's going to be the representation in my neighborhood where I bought to have a home that was a quiet community where I could raise my children. And decisions that have been made in the past have impacted my value in my homes, and additional decisions that are made now are still going to do that. So I just hope that people on this board would take into consideration, if this was your neighborhood and you were raising your family here, would you want that bordering your home, or would you want the community to be maintained the way it was when you purchased it? So I don't know a lot about the planning and about all the politics that are involved. I just know as a personal owner in that community, I support the church, but I also support our neighborhood being maintained the way it was when I bought it.
Thank you for your comment.
Appreciate it.
Next speaker, please.
Betty Alexandra?
We welcome you tonight, ma'am.
Hi, I'm Maddie Alexander. I'm a 23-year homeowner in Holland Pines. And Piney Grove was there when I moved in, and yes, they always parked on the streets. I don't recall seeing towing vehicles. I personally do not have an issue with their parking on our streets. When I went to the first meeting, I said to the pastor, I'm not here about parking on the streets. I don't believe the majority of us are here about the parking. It's been there for the 23 years I've been there. We're just asking that you not demolish a home and turn it into a parking lot. I understand you can buffer it and make it not look as if it's a parking lot, but in the end, it's a parking lot. Also, with the number of cars, we did focus on the number of cars, but that was to say, even if you demolish the home and then cut the roadway into our entrance as well, we will still support your cars on our road. But we're asking, maybe take something off the plate. So the first day, he said, sure, I won't demolish your home. Well, we went to the Planning Commission, and they said, if the issue is parking, demolish the home. Like I said, it wasn't our idea to say no more parking on our streets. Pastor Williams presented it, which I don't know where it came from. Our community did not meet to say, get them off our streets. It wasn't that. We went to his first meeting because we saw the home being demolished. So all I'm asking is that you look at what you're asking Holland Pines to do. You're saying, okay, we're going to pretend they're not going to park on your street. Well, we're saying they're already doing it. But now we're also being asked, allow us to bulldoze a home, turn it into a parking lot, allow us to cut an entrance from your current entrance and share it with them. Well, we already share a left turn lane if you're traveling south on Holland. Maybe if you could let that remain, then we don't need the extra cut through in our neighborhood. That might eliminate some more cars having to make the left turn and come in. It really is. We're asking for a deferral. I support expansion. A big building isn't what does good works. It's people. So, yes, please expand. They're always going to do good works, but let's all work together. And one last thing, I do want to say, it is a concern for my neighbors. My dear friend, Donna Willie, they didn't get the certified letter about what was being asked of the church, of our neighborhood. So if you could just kind of consider that. And like I said, we're supporting them. We absolutely said, please expand. It's maybe a little too big. That's all. And if you want to worry about parking, let's work together. We already let you park on our street.
Thank you very much. Next speaker.
Sorry, that's all the speakers.
Thank you very much, and we appreciate everyone's patience and listening. Mrs. Henley. Oh, excuse me. Pastor Williams, you have 3 minutes to rebut if you'd like.
Just 3?
Yes, sir.
Just a couple of comments. First of all, the trailer that is being mentioned again, that trailer we're just housing on our property is not our trailer, it's not our program. We're just partnering with Men of Faith, and it's their responsibility to uphold the ordinances and all that type of stuff that deal with their program. The whole Saving the House movement, I'm not the most familiar with Virginia law, Virginia Beach Code, but from my understanding as a homeowner, even if this proposal is not approved, that I can pay $50 to get a permit from Virginia Beach to demolish that home next week if I decide to. Now, that's ill-advised, information. I don't know that for sure, but from my understanding, even if I want to demolish my own home, all I need is a permit to do so. So I don't want to get into this Save the House movement. It's the property of Piney Grove Baptist Church, and I think that we should utilize the property that we have purchased to be a benefit to our church. Somebody made mention about property value. You guys again saw the transcript. You saw the video from the Planning Commission. Even one of the members of the Planning Commission stated that there was a church that expanded and did a parking lot close to her home, and that her property value did not decline. Her exact words was the only thing that is happening with that expansion is that she has a few kids that come and skateboard on the parking lot, but she doesn't mind the kids skateboarding. So there have been a number of people that have attested to the fact that if we do this, that it will not affect the property value. Somebody, Buddy Sparrow, said that he was not able to find very many churches with a parking lot adjacent to communities. I want you to key in on the words that he said I wasn't able to find very many. He did not say I was not able to find any at all, which means that what we are suggesting today is not something that's not unheard of. It's not something that hasn't been done before. It's something that has been approved by a council before and has worked. We're just asking that we be one of the other churches that's able to do what we are proposing to do. My last comment is somebody made the comment that the community has tolerated the parking in the community. I'm at the place now where I'm tired of being tolerated. I don't want to be tolerated anymore in our community. We want to have our own parking so that we can be accepted and not tolerated. We don't want to park on the streets anymore. We want to have suitable parking so our people can have the convenience to park on our site and be able to worship at their church. Again, keep in mind, we don't want to be tolerated anymore. We want to be accepted with our own property to do our own parking.
Thank you, sir. I'll let you go first, and we'll have a discussion.
Well, we will have discussion, and I just want to make some comments. We've been working on this almost a year. I think it started last August. And so I'm not really convinced that another 60 days is going to make a whole lot of difference. I first encountered this actually last August at a district forum. I'd begun getting a few emails about Piney Grove's expansion, and then many members of the community came to the district forum in August, and there was a lot of angst. And of course, it started because there was an error in the deed description, which we soon discovered and were able to get cleared up. We had an immediate meeting, I think September 10th, with a core group of the community to say, let's clear that up, that's not a problem, and kind of move forward. And so we have been continuing to have meetings. And there's been numerous contacts. And I was under the impression that when the church agreed to not do the first proposal, which included this this design, but instead keep the house. It was with the understanding with the community that if they did that, the community was in support. However, the community has not been in support, and what I have heard over and over again at the meetings we had with the neighbors and the community in May and again in June at the Planning Commission was the problem was a lack of parking on site and the problems with people crossing Holland. And so I think when the Planning Commission looked at it as an objective body, they said, well, you've got room to put it all on site, go back to your original plan. And so it's been the difficulty in tracking all of this. What are the issues? Because when we seem to try to fix one issue, then another one popped up. And so I just have to say, I'm very frustrated in trying to come to something that will please everybody. I'm sort of at the, I'm sort of convinced we're not going to please everybody. And so I think the thing that we try to do as a body here tonight is to try to do the very best we can to make this application the very best we can be, even though it won't please everybody. I just hope we're able to please a few people. But let me say, too, that it's important that everybody in the community recognize just what we have before us. We have the existing church on their existing parcel, and their existing parcel is 1.94 acres. They have purchased the adjoining property, which was 1.656 acres, to add to their existing parcel. That 1.656 acres, which has been so much a part of this discussion, a house on a wooded site, belonged to the Reed estate, and it's for sale. Had the church not purchased it, somebody else would. And with that property having frontage on what's to be a 4-lane divided highway and being impacted by ACUs, it's in the 65, 70 decibel level, a potential purchaser would not be purchasing that as a house that fronts on Bald Eagle and another 1.5 acres of woodland to keep it agricultural in that state. In almost all probability, another purchaser would be coming in here for a rezoning to use that property in some fashion other than a residential lot. And it's important that everyone understand that agricultural is probably not a reasonable use for that property in that place. And so we would be charged with allowing the property to have a reasonable use. That's sort of what we're required to do. And so, you know, to say I expected this to always remain a residential house on this 1.656 acres with the rest of it being wooded is not something that I think is any kind of guarantee. And it's very important, you know, that we remember that as a part of this whole discussion. And I would like to hear the discussion of the other council members before I make any motion.
Rosemary?
I have a question, and this is the staff. The category 4 and then the category 6. So is there a category 5? Can you kind of
There
go
is.
into?
The difference between 4 and 6, when the planning commission were talking about, they were talking about plant material.
Right.
Category 6 plant material is just a solid evergreen hedge. With category 6 plant material, you get the hedge, and about every 20 feet, you get a tree which will grow up. So the hedge would screen at about a 20-foot height, and the trees would, you know, grow on up to 50, 60 feet in height. So they were talking about landscaping. The fence, they were just talking about along Bald Eagle. I have listened to the tape again. I checked the minutes. I talked to the planning commissioners involved, and, you know, their intent was the fence along Bald Eagle.
Is the fence included in a category 6 or?
Yeah, a
the
fence is included in 6.
Okay.
But even along Bald Eagle, they wanted more than just the category 6 landscaping, because that's a pretty boring, just a hedge kind of thing. So it's, what the church has proposed is a nice landscape plan that varies the landscaping along Bald Eagle with a fence behind it, which will provide instant screening.
And then I guess I'm looking at the 4 that's backing up to all these people's houses, and I'm not
Right.
sure which 2 homes doesn't have a fence.
Okay. So what's being proposed with this new site plan, they were able to get some more room over along this area. When it went to planning commission, it had a 10-foot buffer. Now it is 15 with basically the category 4 plant material, evergreen hedge and trees. Now, there is 6-foot-high privacy fences along most of this property line. Mrs. Henley and I took a look at it again yesterday. She got a lot of mosquito bites. But there are probably 2 homes that don't have a privacy fence. So, it would be up to them to put in a privacy fence. Then there would be 15 feet of landscaping, and then the parking lot would start.
So what would the difference be of a 4 or beefing it up to a 5?
5, it's just different plant material.
I think what Chief Rosemary is looking for is in-depth landscaping, so it's this, this, and this. I think that's what you're
And maybe
after.
that's not what it is.
I don't think 5 consists of employment of fences, decorative walls, enclosure. Yeah, there's not too much difference, a little bit difference in the plant material again.
Mr. Whitehurst talked about extra buffering if they could possibly get that, and I guess that's where I'm, where
Well,
my
in
question
15
is
feet, you can't fit more in there than the
the 4?
category 4. Yeah, that's a great
So when
buffer.
it was 10 feet, what were they going to put in there?
They just the evergreen hedge. I mean, for example, category 4 is what we require between industrial zoning and residential zoning. I mean, it's, for a church, that's pretty unprecedented to put in that much landscaping.
Okay, well, and I have a better understanding now that it's going from a 10 to 15. So
True.
there is
It is still
more
10, it is still 10
buffering.
here along the back of the,
And
back of the
then
church.
they said that some of the people didn't get notification.
yeah, this meeting is the first that has come up. Our administrative staff handles that. I know, could you go to location map, please, Stephen? I know that these people didn't receive notification because this site is really not part of the application. They have a non-conforming parking lot there, and there's no changes proposed to that. I just had Stephen highlight that so that you could all, because there was so much talk at Planning Commission about parking on this side of Holland Road. So that's the only people I know who didn't get notices. It's the first this has come up.
I know y'all try very hard to make sure that's done.
Yes,
Been a lot of discussion over the year, too.
right. Yes, a lot of meetings. We've had so many meetings, and it's the first I've heard of notification problem.
Anything else, Rosemary?
No, thank you.
John Moss.
Before you leave, I'm sure many people have traveled around even developments or a place like this. I'm amazed at what they do in 10 feet of in 10 feet of distance. And I think what they did on the other roadside, it looked like there was landscaping that was in depth, that there was some movement in front of the hedges when I looked at that design.
Along Bald Eagle?
Yeah,
Oh, yeah.
tiered landscaping in depth, in
Right.
15 feet or even in 10 feet, you can do more than just a hedge. You can have in-depth landscaping that is doable.
Right, and
Here.
that fence is going to be at least 20 feet back from the right-of-way.
Right, I think-
Actually, we've got a picture. You want to show the?
Right, I understand that part. I'm wondering
Mrs. Henley standing there. with-
why some of that tiered landscaping, if
Yes.
it could be, couldn't be done on that other area where you went from 10 to 15 feet on that one side of the parking lot. And you said there wasn't enough room, and I just know I've
Well,
seen
you
landscaping done in
could.
that room.
It's not visible along, I think along those lot lines adjoining immediately to residential, it's better to just have the heavy buffer. Where Mrs. Henley is standing is about where the fence would go, and then all that in front of it would be landscape.
My other question, come back to Ms. Inwood. I know a lot of places we have this buffer when people do the trees and the hedges, mainly at shopping centers. It never gets to grow very high, and they slice it down about 2 feet high or 3 feet high so people can still see the stores. So in the conditional use permit of this particular thing, is the height at which this thing is going to be allowed to grow and be maintained at specified? I'm just trying to understand, because I know what happens at other locations for a reason.
To be extra cautious, and then there's, the church isn't going to want visibility, I don't think, but to be extra cautious, you can say that those shrubs will not be trimmed.
I'm just,
That'd
not
be great.
trim, but just some height, because I just know what happens. But I want to come back to the fundamental point that Ms. Henley raised, which makes this a difficult application, and it's not one you can resolve for us, but thank you very much for your.
Thank you,
is
Karen.
We have two competing sets of property rights. The church has bought a piece of property, and they're entitled to use their property. People own their property, they think they have a reasonable expectation of what might happen with their property, but that in and of itself can't override the church's right for a relatively legal use of their property. And ultimately, one of the things we're up here to do, and it's always difficult when you get here, is we're here, and hopefully government's purpose is to protect the rights of property owners. And often you have to protect the right of minority property owners at the expense of the majority because their rights are vested, and that's part of our job. And I wish there was a compromise here, but I do think the church is entitled, and I think we're legally obligated to have a reasonable use of their property. As much as I know I wish I had I could do something other than that, but, all of us here take an oath to say what we're going to do. And our oath really obligates us to recognize and respect the property rights of this property owner if they don't put some unreasonable burden of their, and Ms. Henley, I thought did a nice job talking about what this property owners and the
Good.
sellers were, and she did an excellent job. So I don't want people walking away thinking we're indifferent to the voices that we've heard, but we really have an obligation and a duty to the voices of the property owner under the constitutional laws of the Commonwealth of Virginia. And I applaud Mrs. Henley for her logic, and I think we're obligated for reason, and that's just my view, but I thank you, Karen, for your discussion about the landscaping.
Amelia?
I just want to say that I've been in several meetings with the church, with Karen lastly, and as they worked in a meeting with the community as well. And all the way back, one thing that Barbara Henley has done is kept me informed. And we've heard both sides, but every time we come back to the table, because one thing is covered, then another thing comes up. And it's ongoing. And sometimes we have to do the right thing. And it's important. 145 years, as you know, I've just mentioned about having on the top priority an African American Culture Center. And I applaud the council for looking at this because there is history, and this history needs to be preserved. And they are doing more good in different ways, as they've mentioned. I fully understand where the community, but if you look at the last picture, if you can put that back up where Ms. Henley is, on there you can see the space and trying to work with them for the buffer, for the category, or whatever will be needed. And Ms. Henley is like me in the walk or talk. She's out there trying to make something happen. And I think the due diligence has been done. And it's at this time that we need to make a very important decision that will impact the growth and expansion of this church. And I believe the neighborhood, there are people who said they haven't had much trouble. And you look at the past to predict the future. So I'm sure that they can work together, that they can come to a compromise and make something that is accessible, because we have many churches and they do need parking spaces. And I think they have bent backwards in their way to try to accommodate. And the community have mentioned several things, and quite a few have been met. This is a tough one, but I know in all of our hearts there's possibility to come together and make this work. Thank you.
Yeah, go ahead, Rosemary.
First of all, I think it's really exciting that so many people came out tonight. I mean, this is your local government at work, and I also want to compliment both sides that you're really all just wonderful ladies and gentlemen. and no one ever said anything derogatory about the other. The community respects the church, and the church respects the community, and that's a really, really good thing. This thing about the buffering, Karen, I don't think we want to say that they can't ever trim anything. I think that would be, but is there some way that, like John talked about, to encourage things to get taller, to, especially on the side pieces, not as much on, I mean, on Bald Eagle is one thing, but especially what's going to line the people's homes. Is there some way we could
Well, the
raise
plant
that?
material that's allowed to be in that buffer is designed to
Does grow
grow
quick,
up. The
yeah.
shrubs are designed to grow up 30 feet. I think the church has heard you that, you want that. And I did figure out, in the meantime, category 5, we never use it. That's why we both kind of look like, that is just a wall, no landscaping at all.
Okay, okay. Well, thank you for checking that out.
Council, I'm going to go to Ms. Finley in just a second, but I want to compliment Mrs. Finley. I mean, I really believe this council, on any planning item, tries to do everything they can to bring people together and find, build a consensus. On occasions, we don't get there. And today, we didn't get there, but it didn't for a lack of trying from both sides. I think the community worked at it as well as the church, but the bottom line is we didn't get there. All that being said, though, John Moss and I are going to agree on something,
I'm buying a lottery ticket.
Yeah. Yeah, it is a property right issue, and that's what it gets down to, and is this property being used for a reasonable purpose? And I don't think anyone could deny that. And, as such, I am very sorry that Ms. Finley was put in this position, but she has worked diligently to try to make something work, and I know the result will be good regardless. Ms. Finley, I'll turn it to you, ma'am, for a motion, please.
Well, I think when all of this is done, it's going to be a good project.
Yes.
I know the next 2 years are going to be very, very difficult for that whole community out there. Number one, because of the Holland Road project. Any kind of road project makes life miserable for the folks who are living there. This one is going to be especially tough because Holland Swamp Road is probably one of our oldest right-of-ways. It's been there since before there were vehicles. It's a very crooked road, and it's going to be a tough project. I have been having the project coordinators, or project responsible people from both VDOT and the city at the district forums, and I will continue to have, because that's going to be a tough project for everybody to track. So it's going to be tough. But when you put the construction of the church during that same time, it's going to be doubly tough. And that's why we've got a couple of these conditions in here that address how the parking and activity is going to be handled during this construction of the church. And that is with the shuttle from across the road. And the church has looked at this and has agreed to these conditions. So we've tried to address the difficult time during construction of both the road and the church, as well as after completion of the project. So these things are all addressed in the conditions. I would also say, of course, that a church, and there was a comment that a parking lot is not an allowable use in agricultural, but it's a part of the church, and so therefore it is allowed. We have churches with parking lots all down in the rural area. And so these lot lines will be vacated, and it's the church expansion that we're looking at. A church is an allowable use with a conditional use permit in agricultural. It's also an allowable use in both R10 and R7.5, which are the adjoining residential. So a church is deemed to be compatible in this zoning category as it is in all residential zoning categories. So this issue of compatibility of a church with a residential has forever been addressed in our zoning ordinances, and they're allowed, and they are every place. And I really appreciate all of the concern that council is showing about the buffer, because this is an extremely important part of the whole thing. this particular part that's in this picture, 20 feet from the city right-of-way, is the narrowest point. Some of that area along Bald Eagle has close to 35 feet in that buffer. So I think looking at that and looking at the types of material, there are cedar trees. I don't know why it's Japanese cedar and not red cedar, but they're very dense trees. They're evergreens. They grow tall and they grow quickly. And we have one of the conditions that the landscape material is going to be planted as soon as possible along Bald Eagle, so it will screen by the time that construction is completed. And trying to address this buffering has been a very important part of what we have done. Also, that Category 4 along that side that Rosemary has been so concerned about, that's why we included that those existing trees along there would be preserved wherever feasible. And of course, this application, once we act here, still has to go to the DSC and get all of its site plan approvals. And one of the big issues there is the engineering with the drainage. And we'll just hope that those folks there are okay with leaving more of those trees, because there are some dense trees there in that 15 feet that I think would help to make that buffer. And so we're really hoping that there will be a number of those that will be able to be preserved. And so I won't go through all of these conditions. Some of these were added by the community in the last few days to make it more palatable if we do agree to do it. And so the council all has copies of this with these proposed conditions. And remembering that a church is a conditional use permit in this area, and the whole idea is that a church with certain conditions can be approved. And that's why we've gone through all of these conditions, because we really feel that with these conditions, the church can be a compatible use with the neighborhood. And I will certainly be very much involved with the time when this is being constructed to make certain that all of these conditions are followed. And I'm sure the church is going to do everything they can to do the very best job they can do. And with all that confidence, I will move that we approve it with these conditions.
I have a motion.
Second.
I've got a motion in several seconds. Any discussion? I'll call for the question, please. All right. We'll now move to appointments, Mr. Vice Mayor.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Folks, if y'all could keep the noise down, we're still conducting the meeting, please. Thank you.
For the record, the vote is 11 in favor.
Thank you, Ruth. Mr. Mayor, I'd like to nominate to the Clean Community Commission Tyler Midget, to the Parks and Recreation Commission Joanne Young, to the Public Library Board Paulina M. Gordine Throat.
Do I hear any other nominations? Hearing none, I'll call for the question, please.
By a vote of 11 to 0, you have appointed those names by the Vice Mayor.
Unfinished business? Is there any new business? We'll adjourn, and I'll see y'all in August.
Yeah.